Good evening, folks. Good evening, folks. It's my pleasure to welcome you this evening. My name is Michael Sakamoto. I'm the Performing Arts Curator and also the Director of the Asian and Asian American Arts and Culture Program, both here at the Fine Arts Center at UMass Amherst. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to an evening with Martha Graham Dance Company. And right now, as a little pre-show, I was going to say more than an hors d'oeuvre, appetite, more than an appetizer. It's an experience in itself. We're here with Janet Eilber, Artistic Director of the company, and I'm not going to bore you with giving a kind of conventional intro telling you who she is and who and what Martha Graham Dance Company is. You can, some of you already know, and you can read the program. Our time with Janet is precious, so let's kind of jump right in. But welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, can you hear me?
Maybe just to start with, I think a lot of folks here will either know some of the company, what some of the history, some of the Martha's history and modern dance, of course, but perhaps maybe fill in a little bit sort of generally the gaps for those who don't. Maybe if you can give just sort of the sort of spark notes.
Elevator speech.
Yeah, the elevator speech version of who and what, from your perspective, the Martha Graham Dance Company is, and why.
Well, begin at the beginning. Martha was born in 1894 and came of age in American dance of that era, which was very sort of escapist, decorative fantasies, swans and royalty and imaginary gods and goddesses, floating fabric, smoke, that sort of thing. And in the 1920s, between the war, she was a star dancing this in the Greenwich Village Follies, but became dissatisfied with it and really began to look for a type of movement that would express the human condition and the struggle of being human. And if this was America between the wars, you should stop me when I go into the 6-week course.
This is all great.
And
then you go on.
America in general would just become a world power, but we did not have our own forms of expression. We were borrowing arts from other cultures. And this search for an American voice was happening in all of the art forms. This is the era when American jazz came into being. Copeland and Gershwin were looking for the American sound, and Kate McCardle was looking for the American fashion, the American look, and Hemingway and Faulkner. And, there was this great search for our voice, and what all of those artists did in their own field, Martha did for dance. She was determined to find a way to express the inner landscape, as she said, and she began to study us, the way we move, the way we reveal ourselves through movement, how we hold our bodies when we're unhappy or when we're ecstatic. And she discovered that emotion rides on the breath. When you laugh, when you sob, when you're nervous, it all comes from the center of your body and your breath. And she developed her famous contraction and release. The contraction being the exhale and the folding of the body, and the release being the inhale and the sending of energy away from the center. And you're going to see about 1,500 contractions and releases on stage tonight. The thing about the contraction and the release is physically it uses the core of the body, and Pilates and yoga, and the core of the body is where the power and the weight of the body exists. And emotionally, again, so descriptive. The center of your body is so descriptive. So she came upon this combination that has driven the company, her choreography, and her style of dancing to today, because it's so recognizable on stage, these emotional movements. I have one demonstration. I'll demonstration. Well, I like to talk about the power of the contraction. I often see it in professional sports, and in particular, a baseball pitcher, when he's winding up, the plate's down there, goes way back into a big Martha Graham contraction. And then the release is, he leverages off the mound. The release goes all the way through the spine and through the power of releasing the ball. So, you don't release the ball like that, you use the whole body. And you'll see our dancers on stage tonight. The extremities are all motivated by leveraging against the floor and the use of that undulating torso. Okay.
So perhaps it was a missed opportunity that Martha Graham and Nolan Ryan never collaborated. So perhaps for a moment, continuing with the personal, because so much of Martha's legacy and technique is, for me anyways, as a dance practitioner, scholar, educator, is very much how she established how much the sort of idiosyncratic, personal, subjective experience, within a specific person's body can become this huge sort of technical and aesthetic and social, cultural base for so much. It always fascinates me how dance professionals, come to the work. So I'm curious how you came to it, because not only have you been the longtime artistic director, but you have long, obviously, history with the company. Do you want to maybe let people know?
Yeah, I went to the Juilliard School for college, and in high school I had not studied the Martha Graham technique at all. I didn't really know anything about it. And I was required to take it my freshman year at Juilliard, and just absolutely hated it. I couldn't figure out why we were sitting on the floor for the first 30 minutes of the class, doing all these exercises, and then so I skipped most of my classes. And I had to cram, I had to learn them all for my jury at the end of my freshman year. So I quickly learned all those exercises. And then my sophomore year, I was cast, they were doing a student production of Martha Graham's Diversion of Angels from 1948. And I was cast in that. And in the course of those rehearsals and the performances, the light bulb went off. And I realized that this vocabulary I was learning in the classroom had the breadth and depth. You could be anyone you wanted to be. You could say anything you wanted to say. A girl from the Midwest could be Medea and fill these incredible roles. And Martha's work, you're required to fill or to reveal the emotionality in it. You're not just doing a series of movements. She expected you to bring your vulnerability to it, to bring your own personal power to it, and to really, you really had to discover who you were in order to be a Martha Graham dancer and use her vocabulary expressively. So I was addicted after that.
And then since then, since you're in the time you're in the company as a dancer, what's been the journey? You've been artistic director for a couple decades now, and how's that experience and that journey been for you?
Well, it's entirely different viewing these works from the outside than being inside them. I've learned so much more. I mean, I worked with Martha when I was a dancer, but I feel like I've learned much more about her now observing her artwork day in and day out, and trying to get inside of her head of why she decided that diagonal should come in there, or why that person's exiting while this one's coming in. So it's an entirely different experience, really. Both they reflect on each other. Of course, my dancing certainly serves what I'm doing now, and I feel like everything that I did before being artistic director, including being a mother and dancing on Broadway, doing some TV and movie, everything has added to what I do as artistic director.
Thank you. I'm curious, and sort of ask this question as a segue to maybe talking a little more in a minute about the works you folks are going to see this evening, the recent history of the company. So there's, of course, the 3 decades since Martha was around, since her passing. And so there's that, sort of generation and a half of development. And then really, I would say, well, you've been artistic director, really making some really sort of generational strides in really expanding and diversifying the repertoire, how far you can push the sort of aesthetic and technical base of the company, and how it relates to the world we live in now, which Martha did so wonderfully, the years that she was active. So, any perspective on what is your perspective on kind of where the company is these days in the early 21st century?
Well, when I came in, the company was not in great shape. This would have been in the early 2000s. There was actually a court case. Her heir was arguing over who owned the ballets, who owned the names, the name Martha Graham, and the company was terribly in debt, and frankly just wasn't getting that much work after Martha's death. And we had never really asked who we were going to be after Martha's death. Once this genius at the head of everything disappeared, who was going to care about the Martha Graham Dance Company? And did anybody care about the Martha Graham Dance Company? So when I came in, there were actually these amazing audience studies. I don't think you remember these. The Knight Foundation and RAND hosted surveys of theater, dance, symphony audiences, and we're asking what are the benefits of being an audience for dance? What is audience inclusion? And they ask everything from is babysitting too expensive, is the parking too far away, to what makes a memorable performance, and it was very extensive. And the bottom line was that audiences wanted a deeper, richer experience in a shorter amount of time. It was the beginning of Google. People didn't want the curtain to go up and to not know what was going on without being able to say, Google, what's going on? So as I came in as artistic director, and because we were kind of bottomed out, there was only one way to go. We had to try something new. We began to look at what other art forms were doing that were in the same boat, basically, like museums and the opera. Museums had added audio tours years before. The opera had been using super titles for a long time, so why not dance? And we started experimenting, doing, you'll see tonight, we do a simple spoken introduction to all of our programs, like a museum's audio tour. We started using media, narration on stage. We started making really unusual partnerships at universities and museums, and we had a 2-week residency at Google. We started doing really, just trying everything. We did something called the Clitemestra Rematch Challenge in 2008, where we posted solos from Martha's ballet Clitemestra, and we challenged people. We had cash prizes to download the solos and do whatever they wanted to do. They could learn them and videotape themselves doing it. They could edit them. They could add different music, but they had to relate the character to someone or something in the news today. You can still find these on YouTube, by the way, if you want to take a look. One of my favorites was Our Helen of Troy overlapped with Britney Spears escaping from the paparazzi. I mean, we were trying everything, but looking for more points of access for different audiences to come and discover Martha Graham. And because although there was a reputation out there that it was kind of old and over, the fact are that her ballets are timeless and relevant today. We just needed to let people in on the big secret. Sorry, I'm getting around to the program tonight. So one of that, once we kind of did all these let the audience in things, we started commissioning new work that somehow related to Martha. Our first foray into that was our Lamentation Variations. I don't know if you've seen them. we had an opening night on the anniversary of 9/11. And in order to commemorate the date, we didn't have much time, we didn't have much money. We asked 3 young choreographers to create short dances for the company. It was going to be a one-night only thing. Inspired by a film of Martha dancing her iconic solo Lamentation. It's the one in the tube of fabric. There's all those iconic photos up. And we said one night only, you can have 10 hours of rehearsal, public domain music, simple costumes, no sets. Keep it under 4 minutes because that's how long the dance is. And you can have any number of dancers in the company. So it was Larry Kegwin and Richard Move and Azure Barton. And Azure did a duet and Richard did a solo and Larry used the whole company. We showed the film of Martha, then 4 minutes, 4 minutes, 4 minutes. These gems of contemporary choreography that were totally organically tied to our work. And it was so fabulous. I mean, it was just so moving that of course we started dancing them all over the world and commissioning more. We're up to 15 Lamentation variations. And we began to commission more longer works from a great range of choreographers at this point we've worked. And that, speaking of audience access, is really the classics. We do programs that have the Grand Classics, and as you'll see tonight with new work, the classics bring sort of a historical significance and context to the new work, and the new work brings fresh eyes and fresh context to Martha's way. There's a real 1 + 1 = 3, I think. You can discover how profound Martha's works are, how timeless they are, and that a lot of the conversations are still the same. You know, the political activism that Martha took on in the 30s with civil rights and women's rights and climate change, the Dust Bowl. I mean, the conversation really hasn't changed that much. I think I should stop. We do have a show to do, right?
Well, just really quick about at least one of the pieces this evening. So, Canticle for Innocent Comedians. Again, you can read in the program notes about the basic concept, but I'm very in the structure. It's all there, but I'm very curious because it's a true, not just a collaboration, but a large scale collaboration between, I believe, 8 different choreographers?
It's 9.
9, okay.
One of them gets done by twin sisters, so there are 2 choreographers.
Aha, so I stand corrected. So how did that come together? And what was the sort of decision-making process to really make such a broad and ambitious work?
Well, Martha did a work in 1952 called Canticle for Innocent Comedians, and it was a celebration of nature and supposed to be magical. Paul Taylor, the choreographer, said he saw it as a student, and it was the reason he became a choreographer. So it was well received, but poorly documented. There's a film of one of the duets. There's a lot written about it. There are photos. And I've been kind of circling it for years, trying to decide, could we really bring this back to life? Are some of the original cast members still alive who could remember it? And we never could quite get it off the ground. But we liked the concept of, especially, well, again, the conversation continues about the value of nature and the beauty of our planet and our responsibility towards it. So we decided to borrow Martha's title and her structure and fill it with new choreography. And we combined it with the desire. There are so many fabulous new voices in choreography today that we've been wanting to work with, that we could invite a different choreographer to do each one of the 8 vignettes that make up this dance. They're titled for nature: sun, moon, earth, wind, water, fire. And so that's what we did. And we had found a range of choreographers who have very different dance backgrounds. In Yue is a Chinese artist her background is the classical Chinese folk dance. And the Alain sisters, the twins from the UK come out of athleticism and Afro-Caribbean dance. Michaela Taylor comes out of street dance and hip hop. So it's not like you're going to see a different style in each one of these vignettes, because these artists have emerged out of those backgrounds and created their own concert dance vocabulary. But it gives the whole thing a lot of texture, I would say.
Maybe we can start opening up a little bit to the audience. Does anyone have any questions? Anything they're curious about? Yes.
What do you and your dancers want or hope for from us as your audience?
What are we hoping for from the audience?
Thanks so much.
Yeah, we want a kinesthetic connection. We want you to feel us without thinking about it. Sort of to understand us with your human bodies, seeing those human bodies on stage and feeling the physical connection and connecting to the emotions that the physicality is evoking. So we want you to just go on the ride. And then at the end, stand up and clap.
I love the example of the baseball pitcher, and I wondered if you could tell us a couple more ideas that use that expand and release.
The contraction and release. Oh man, let's see. Trying to think of how they use it in some examples in Dark Meadow. We're opening with Dark Meadow tonight. It's from 1946. Well, you'll see there's a beautiful women's dance that opens this dance, but then the solo man enters, and he has a very difficult step where the contraction is actually making him hop backwards with one leg up. I can't do it very well, but when you see Lloyd Knight tonight with one leg up, hopping backwards, he's in a deep contraction. The contraction is making him move backwards. There's a beautiful lift in Dark Meadow with the women jam. I don't know why I'm trying to demonstrate. They plie all the way down to sit on their heels, and then they spring up into the man's arms, and they're in a deep contraction like this.
Wow.
Being spun around by the men. It's just every moment they're moving from their center. So it's just something to look for as you see the various movements that happen.
So I personally am a dancer, and one of my favorite styles is modern dance, and I was just wondering where I could learn more about Martha Graham.
Where you can learn more about Martha Graham. I was just saying, there's a brand new biography about Martha Graham. So if you want to do reading, or it's on audio also, if you want to dive in that way. But we're also on Instagram, we're on YouTube, our website, and we're going to be dancing in New York at the Joyce Theater for 2 weeks in April, if you can make it down.
We have time for maybe one more. Anyone? Oh, yes.
Thank you very much. This may be an unfair question, but I'm very curious about when Merce Cunningham sort of followed after Martha Graham and kind of took a different approach and was doing improvisation, and so the dancers wouldn't necessarily know what the music was going to be, that they had to respond to. Did that influence the Martha Graham side of things?
I don't know if you could all hear that. He was asking about Merce Cunningham, who actually began his career in Martha's company and then broke away and went into doing things like Dance by Chance and adding music to the choreography at the last moment as the dancers went off on stage, and it was often very much the design happened sort of as it was being performed. And was Martha influenced by that? It's hard to tell. I mean, she would say no, but she was influenced by everything. I mean, she just had her thumb on the pulse, or whatever that metaphor is, of the times. And she was also very aware of audiences. That was part of her genius, I think, just understanding what the audience was getting from her performance. And she changed. She changed ballets because she understood that dancers were dancing differently, audiences were perceiving things differently, and she would change things. I was lucky enough to dance at the White House when she received the Medal of Freedom. And I danced Lamentation in the tube, and there's a gray bench that you sit on for that dance. And they put up a stage in the East Room where there's a crystal chandelier and there's gold edging around the molding in the room, and it's very beautiful, beautiful. And she saw me sitting on that stage on the gray bench in my purple tube, and she said, "Do we have time to paint the bench gold?" I said, no, Martha, we don't have to. So that was just her, she was just constantly looking and trying to understand the impact of what she was offering.
So maybe to close out, what's next in terms of either, I guess, projects or thoughts about the future of the company? Where are you?
We've got a sneak preview tonight of a work that we've just commissioned and that will be premiering in about 3 weeks in New York. And there's a second commission also premiering in April. But we're also revving up for a celebration of our 100th anniversary, which is going to be in 2026. And we're planning a 3-year celebration. Thank you.
Well, join the audience and wish you congratulations, and we're just really, really pleased to finally have you back after a few years. And please enjoy the show. Thank you, Jenna.
Thank you.